The difference between service quality and product quality really comes from the fundamental differences between services and products. And let's go ahead and review those fundamental differences between services and products. Services are intangible, like smoke and mirrors, and products are tangible, like a bar of gold. Services are performed by people generally, while products are made by machines generally. With regard to the industries, service industries tend to be very, very fragmented, like a whole bunch of little teeny companies, and product industries tend to be very, very concentrated with a few much, much, much larger companies. There are a number of different traditional services, and we can group them into various categories. There are personal services, financial services, health services, professional services. Personal services, these would be things like hair care, piano lessons, nail care, massages, things like that. Financial services, well, those would obviously be things like banking, uh, tax services. Health services, well, of course, that would be, medical care, dental care. Professional services, we could even break that further into a couple of things. Professional services are things like legal services, interior design services, architect services, but would also include things like landscaping, plumbing services, handyman services, and so on. Now, industries, traditionally, service industries are much more fragmented and product industries are much more concentrated. Not all the time, but traditionally. For example, let's go ahead and define that. A concentrated industry is when most of the industry's sales are accounted for by just a few firms. For example, the big four accounting firms audit 96% of the public companies in the United States. That's incredibly concentrated, although that, of course, is a service business. But note that's a business to business, that's a B2B service business. An example of a product industry that's very, very concentrated, only three firms make jet engines for the world's commercial aircraft. Only two make the aircraft. Now, the three firms that make the jet engines, those are GE, Rolls-Royce, and Pratt and Whitney, which is a United Technologies company. The two firms that make the aircraft, those are Boeing and Airbus. Well, those are obviously examples of very, very concentrated industries. On the other hand, a fragmented industry is when no company has more than 1% share of the market. You've got lots and lots and lots of little teeny companies, beauty salons, plumbers, bookkeepers, cement mixing companies. Notice how those are all service businesses. Certain industries are incredibly concentrated. The auto industry, for example, 10 automakers represent 72% of global auto production. That is very, very concentrated. It's even more concentrated in the laundry detergent business. In the United States, Procter and Gamble and Unilever basically own the entire business. If we look globally, throw in Henkel, which is a German company, Church and Dwight, which is also an American company. Those four companies represent a huge lion's share of the global laundry detergent industry. One example of a service industry that used to be much more fragmented but is now becoming a little bit more concentrated is the restaurant industry. It used to be that restaurants were almost entirely, mom and pop restaurants. There was one unit, or possibly a couple of units. Well, one of the issues with a fragmented industry is if you're not familiar with the provider, you don't have any idea about the service quality. And that's one reason why there's started to be more concentration of the restaurant business. You had a good idea of what you were getting. The restaurant company that really started to concentrate one segment of the restaurant industry was, of course, McDonald's. The fast food segment of the restaurant industry became much more concentrated, and of course, McDonald's was far and away the lead there. If you remember, I talked about the restaurant industry basically having three segments. There was fast food, there was casual dining, like Applebee's, and there was fine dining. Well, the casual dining, of course, that has become much more concentrated with the likes of Applebee's, Chili's, Bennigan's, TGI Fridays, restaurants of that ilk. Even fine dining, which was the last bastion of fragmentation in the restaurant business, is becoming more concentrated. Ruth's Chris, that's a delicious steak that they serve at Ruth's Chris. Well, Ruth's Chris is the largest of the fine dining chains. They've got 127 units all around the country. Here's another example of fine dining. Oh, that looks nice inside of that Capitol Grill restaurant. Well, there are actually 54 different units that look just like that. Another example of a service industry that has historically been fragmented, but which is becoming more concentrated, is the hair salon business. The hair salon business still is quite fragmented, although there is some concentration at the high end. You've got salons like Paul Mitchell salons. At the lower end, you've got salons like Supercuts. Now, how do you define service quality? There's a number of different parameters that can go into service quality. For example, one parameter is reliability. Now, reliability is the ability to perform the service right the first time. It is reliable. Another parameter is responsiveness, the ability to provide prompt service. Assurance, you're assured of quality. Assurance really gets to the knowledge and courtesy of employees. How do the employees treat you? Well, that's empathy, caring, individualized attention to customers. And is it possible to make anything, remember, services are intangible, but is it possible to make anything tangible, any physical evidence of the service? Most service businesses try to come up with something that is tangible. I can't think of a service industry that is more intangible than the insurance business. Do you know what you buy when you buy insurance? When you buy insurance from any insurance company, you buy a contract. That's what you buy. You buy a contract. It says, okay, I will pay you, this money, and you will pay me back if certain things happen. If nothing happens, you just keep paying your insurance, bill. But then when your car gets smashed, when your house gets, broken into and so on, well, then they pay you back. When you buy insurance, you buy a contract. Doesn't get a whole lot more intangible than that. But notice how all the insurance companies have come up with something that is tangible, whether it's the Prudential Rock or the Allstate Good Hands or the Traveler Umbrella, or of course the Geico Gecko. All the insurance companies try to come up with something tangible representation of the company. Where you interact with the service provider, that's called the service encounter. And the service encounter is a very, very important thing. Several elements of the service encounter include the social elements, where employees and customers interact. The physical elements, including the so-called servicescape, the physical facility where the service is performed. Servicescapes definitely impact quality perceptions. Now, there is a so-called gap model of service quality that identifies, what is expected and what the perception of the quality is. One thing that is very, very important to service providers is how people talk about the service situation that they had. Word of mouth communication is hugely important for service companies. In other words, what their current customers say to other prospective customers about the uh, situation that they had there at the service. And of course, now online websites like Yelp allow people to share information. So this has become a very, very important aspect of service quality. What kind of feedback are you getting? What kind of word of mouth communication, is going on websites like Yelp? Service quality differs from product quality because of the four service characteristics.